So I think we've all heard the term burnout at some point in the last few years, right? Well, one of the main causes of burnout is the lack of work-life balance. And I, as a leadership coach, am about to tell you my thoughts on that. I'm a Maxwell Leadership Certified Coach and here to talk about leadership with you. So work-life balance for leaders and managers is important. This is important for anybody, but especially so for leaders and managers. So often when you're promoted up the corporate ladder, or you're advancing to different positions, or maybe it's a small department, a small team, and the leader of that team all of a sudden gains a whole bunch of responsibility. Well, in those instances, work-life balance tends to suffer. You start to become more busy, you have to work extra hours, maybe it's pulling a little bit of extra time on the weekends, and before you know it, you are facing burnout. This is a terrible place for a leader to end up, but sadly, so many leaders do. So what are some practical things that we can do as leaders and managers to avoid burnout? Well, regardless of what you're leading, if it is a church, a nonprofit, a corporation, whether you're leading a team or an entire business, maybe you're an entrepreneur, whatever it is, we can work through this. The first thing that I will tell you that will help with your work-life balance is to schedule time for the most important things. And what I mean by that, if you're like me, you're a person of faith, you may want to schedule blocks of time for prayer or reading scripture and having that set aside time. You want to block off your calendar to attend church services. You want to be sure nothing interrupts those times. So scheduling is important for other people. Maybe it's time you schedule time you spend with your spouse or significant other. Maybe it's times that you know your kid is going to be playing in a sports game or going to be performing at a recital or a dance or something. You schedule off that block of time. You make sure, since it is important, you block it off your calendar so that you can preserve that space and nothing overlaps that. But then it's up to you to determine that you are going to keep it, because that is hard, especially as an entrepreneur and other team leaders. It's so easy to say, well, these people, they need me, or this has come up and this needs my attention. So the question is, I had a manager one time that used to always ask me this question when I was working on something. She would just simply look and say, can it be done tomorrow? And you have to learn to ask yourself those questions when you're balancing work and life. Is it something that has to be done immediately, or can it be done tomorrow? Can it wait? Can it maybe be done next week? Is it urgent, or is it something that truly can wait? The other thing that you have to consider in this instance when you're scheduling time and blocking off for what is important is determining what those important things are. Obviously, your faith and your family should be of the utmost importance. Don't neglect other friendships or maybe social events, ways you can decompress, because those will help keep you from burnout. The second thing you need to do beyond simply just scheduling your time is taking time to rest, decompress, and relax. So this is something, again, a lot of entrepreneurs, a lot of pastors, a lot of other leaders, they simply just don't do it. They maybe are working and they do extra things. Maybe as a pastor, you're working, you're preaching, and then you're going and visiting people, you're responding to texts, you're counseling people, and it's just constantly, if you do not take time to rest and recoup and invest in yourself, your self-health and benefit, then you will start to suffer. The same for business leaders and entrepreneurs. If you do not take time, that is leisure time, a vacation, spending time with your spouse or your kids, things that are more relaxing or that are more valuable to you, then you will start to suffer. At the same time, something else you may consider, you may have a hobby, and that hobby is important to you. And if you start to invest so much time into your work, you start to neglect your hobby. And before long, you may sit and say, well, I really miss when I got to play this instrument. I really miss when I got to go play golf. I really miss when I got to go bowling, or whatever the hobby may be. You need to set time aside to do the things that bring you joy, things that you are happy about, because hopefully you enjoy your job. Hopefully you like your job and you enjoy what you're doing. But there are things that are more fun than work a lot of times, and you have to be sure to get back to that point, to rest and recover and do those things you enjoy. Thought number 3 for having this proper work-life balance, and this is probably the most important one, you have to set boundaries. So if you do not have boundaries, and this goes back to scheduling your time, if you do not have the boundaries of when you are available and when you are not, people will take advantage because you are always available. For me as an entrepreneur, I am taking efforts to block off Sunday as a set aside day that I can spend with family, I can spend with my wife, I can go to church, I can spend it in study, I can spend it in a way that is restful and recouping myself. So that's something you've got to consider is for work-life balance, you have to have boundaries. And this could be boundaries with extended family. Maybe they are always wanting you to come and do things. You have to schedule it in your calendar. You can't always be available. The same, maybe it's meeting with clients and your calendar's getting full and you really want to meet with this extra client. A lot of times they will understand if it needs to wait until the next week or the next day. They will understand because we're all busy. You can't be always available. You have to prioritize your meetings, what you're wanting to do, but then recognize that when you've reached your limit, you have reached your limit. You can't go any further than that. So set healthy boundaries, whether, again, that's family, that's work, that's with clients. Make sure you have a boundary. The last tip I'm going to give you, number 4, is don't be always available. And I know I've referenced this a couple times already, but your cell phone, having that out there and having yourself as available all the time is very dangerous. I heard of a leadership guru. He's a very famous person. If I called him by name, you would recognize the name. But he talks about how he carries 2 cell phones. One of them is the one that he gives out and everybody has access to. The other person or the other phone, only his family has. And his rule is the other one, he'll send it to voicemail, he'll wait, he'll delay. But that second phone that only his family has, he will answer that regardless of where he's at any time. That is for his spouse. That is for his kids. They have immediate access to him at all times. So sometimes we have to set boundaries, and it may be uncomfortable. It may not seem like what we want, but you need to not always be available, have those boundaries to schedule things the way they need to, and definitely take time to care for yourself, rest, relax, recoup, invest in yourself and what's important to you. And that is how you can have better work-life balance and avoid burnout. I hope you enjoyed this video. I hope you maybe learned something. Be sure to check out my channel for other videos on leadership and also Christian leadership. And I hope you join me again for another video. I'll see you in the next one.